Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to PDN, Personal Development Networking. This is a Houston West Chamber of Commerce event. Tell you a little bit about Houston West Chamber. They have over 800 company members, and when you translate that to employees and staff and so on, you've got over 70,000 people that you're in contact with. And they have over 300 meetings, just like one like this, every year. So check them out. There's the contact information for Houston West Chamber. Now, what is PDN? PDN is Personal Development Networking. It's actually business and personal development. And we cover a variety of areas. Number one, we cover physical. And you're going to hear a presentation from Red O'Laughlin today on an aspect of health. Mental. We cover things like memory improvement. Business. Every aspect of business. With goals and planning, operations, administration, and of course leadership. And then networking. We have a brief session on networking, just giving you some pointers that will help you in your networking abilities. This is just a few. We've been conducting this session for over 8 years, so once a month for 8 years. That's a tremendous number of speakers that we've had. Some of these you may know. Upper left-hand corner is Marshall Silver. He is a business hypnotist. Made over $200 million, so he knows what he's doing there. Next to him is Eric Swanson. Eric Swanson conducted the Habitude Warriors Conference. Some of you may have attended those years ago. We had a number of them here in Houston. I spoke at 3 of those, I think. Eric Stanley. Eric Stanley built the largest networking event in Houston, over 10,000 members in his networking group. Brian Hilliard. Brian wrote Networking Like a Pro. And Networking Like a Pro is, I think, probably the best book on networking that you can get your hands on. Some of you know Hank Moore. Hyatt Ives is in a meeting with Hank every so often. Hank has written, I think, 12 or 13 books, all of them bestsellers. 3 of them are nominated for Pulitzer Prize. They're all about business, and one of the books I really enjoy is called Houston Legends. It's all about the starting of Houston. Howard Partridge. Howard Partridge is one of my mentors. He is the exclusive international sales trainer for the Zig Ziglar Corporation. And he also has a great group called Phenomenal Products, and we meet on a quarterly basis with some very interesting speakers. Ruben Gonzalez. Ruben is 4 times Olympian in 4 different decades. Written a lot of books and great keynote speaker. Tom Big Al Schreider. He's not big and his name's not Al, but anyway, Big Al is the top networking skills trainer in the world. He travels 300 days out of the year, speaking all over the world. Jonathan Sprinkles. Presentation is his key. He teaches people how to do a better job standing up here in front of the crowd. When Paula Abdul, just a couple years ago, did her restart, he was a coach for her to get her off and running on the new career. Bill Walsh. If any of you went to the Small Business Today Expo down at George R. Brown Convention Center with 2,000 other people, that was the event that Bill Walsh put on. He did them all over the country. He is rated as one of the 8 top business trainers in the world. Constable Ted Heap. we were just talking about him. Constable Heap is the constable for Precinct 5, which is kind of this area out here, western part of Houston. And that constable's office is the second largest constable's office in the entire United States. Over 400 constables and over 50 support personnel. Fantastic speaker. Doug Winnie. I've got a special gift for you today, and Doug Winnie is part of it, but Doug Winnie is the #1 coach in a group called Action Coach. Action Coach is, you're familiar with Action Coach, is the largest business coaching group in the world, over 1,000 coaches. Doug has been #1. Steve and I spoke last month. He is the CEO for the Greater Houston YMCA. 277,000 families involved in Stephen's organization. Dr. Emily Latran, actually our speaker today, Carl Loop, and I attended one of Emily's trainers, but fantastic trainer. And on the far right, the bottom, is Dr. Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, the world's largest business referral organization. BNI has almost 300,000 members. Just some of the speakers that we've had here. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes with a tip on networking. Every month for 8 years, I produced an article in Small Business Magazine, Small Business Today magazine. The founder of that, Steve Levine, has passed away just recently, but I have a lot of material when it comes to networking, connecting. So Houston has been going through a tremendous crisis experience. The hurricanes and the flooding and the pandemic and the crooked politicians and the economic downturns, government regulations affect our business. You may even be experiencing a crisis at this time. I just heard this morning that CO2 is a shortage. They're running out of CO2. Now, for all of you beer drinkers, CO2 is one of the main products that produces beer. Okay. You may be experiencing some fear of change of these things that are going on. Fear and faith are unable to coexist. It can't happen at the same time. I told you a little bit about Jonathan Sprinkles and his presentation power. There is a little difference between your physical and your virtual networking. Most of the things that you can do can be done at the same time. Connection is a foundation for long-lasting, profitable business relationship. All business and life is about building relationships. Most communication is done through body language, and so doing virtual, it's hard to have body language unless you're doing Skype or Zoom or something like that. So think pivot, look at networking from a different perspective. So become the #1 version of yourself. The #1 skill is consistency, doing it time and time again. You accomplish the most work the day before you go on vacation. You know why that is? Because you're focused. Now, if you can convert that, like a friend of mine, Simon Chan, does, to everyday networking, he sets up a 15-minute segment where he does 5 minutes where he's prospecting, 5 minutes where he's doing follow-up, and 5 minutes when he's doing presentation to prospects. Perfect time to mastermind with people with different backgrounds and with different viewpoints, so let's network. This is just a list, by the way. We're recording this session, and so you'll be able to pick up all of these links and so on when you look at the recording. This time I'd like to introduce to you our featured speaker, Carl Loop. Carl Loop is the author of, well, I've got the book up here for you, Mondays Reimagined. Fantastic book. He's got a BFA in photography, a BS in mathematics, MBA in marketing. He's got 2 amazing sons, and you know he thinks and knows that they're amazing because right on his website, that's the first thing you're going to see is the amazing son. And list of his heroes there. One he and I were talking about before the meeting started, that is a common friend. I've known him for 25 years, and he is a mountain climber. Well, not just a mountain climber. He has climbed, at over 70 years of age, 7 of the highest mountains in the world, and that's including Mount Everest. And Carl has done some smaller mountain climbing with him. So help me welcome Carl Loop.
Hey! Hey! All right, let me see if I can work this clicker. Thanks, it's so great to see everybody. I know there's been a few bends in the road, and yet we are here. Maybe we're getting back on track, getting back on the path again. So Mondays Reimagined, you know, right before I came in here, I was watching, I was sitting in my car, and I started watching a little show called, has anybody heard this show? The show's called I Shouldn't Be Alive. So I hope that my speaking doesn't create an episode for that show. Mondays Reimagined. Okay, so while I was out there, another thing happened while I was out in the parking lot. It was the, but I'll get to that. But I first want to ask this question. Is there anything in the morning better than a good blank? Who wants to participate? Give me some thoughts about it.
It's not a cup of coffee because I don't drink that stuff.
Okay. Something else.
Snooze alarm.
Hitting that snooze? Okay. Maybe especially on Mondays?
I have 6 Saturdays and a Sunday every week. I don't.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sunrise.
Ma'am.
A good praise session, just saying thank you to God.
Gratitude and praise. Okay. Anything better? Is there anything in the morning better than a good praise and great session of gratitude and praise? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to add my piece in here because this is going to dovetail into my conversation. For me, at a time in my life, there was nothing in the morning better than a good honking of the horn out in traffic. Get out there and honk on that horn, right? Especially Monday mornings, because they'd interrupt my weekend. Monday interrupted the weekend for me. There was a time I was not really happy with Monday mornings, and in fact, according to some studies, a shocking 75% or more of people dread Monday mornings. And that dreading can start for many people on Sunday. So you don't get much break, right? Friday going home, you're worn out. Then Saturday, you get a full day, and that's it. If you think about it, there's only one day of the week when you don't really have to set an alarm, when you really don't have to set an alarm. Because Sunday evening, you set the alarm for Monday, maybe, if you have an alarm clock kind of job. And then Friday morning, you set it. So you only got Saturday with no alarm clock. So that's a problem to me that I experienced, which had me agitated, frustrated. I did not enjoy what I was doing on Monday mornings. So that became kind of a place for me to look at. And truly, you can almost say that the health of a business can be determined and measured by how people show up on Monday morning. A lot of absences, a lot of people are late, and so forth. So that is almost a signal right there of a perhaps underperforming organization or culture. So, honking that horn. Now, when I moved to Texas, which was over 15 years ago, I had 2 goals: to stop honking my horn in traffic and to have just one happy thought a day. Okay, I was in a sad state of my life. I was in a lower kind of dip place, low place in my life. So again, That's why this became something for me to tend to and pay attention to. Now, to have elevated results, we have to be elevated, right? Gail was, talking about some accolades of the people right there. #1 salesperson and action coach, and so forth. Titles, accomplishments. To have elevated results, we have to be elevated. Now, some people say we shouldn't celebrate accomplishments because it makes others that didn't have them, like maybe not measure up. But to that I say, it's kind of like saying if somebody can't swim and they jump in the water, we should all drown to make them feel good. Okay? So I'm going to blaze a trail today through how to elevate ourselves. And it's a 3-part journey. And does this have a laser?
Yeah, but lasers don't work too good on screens.
Won't show up? Okay. So, I brought my pointer. If you take a look, there's kind of like a 3-part journey to our lives. We start off in a very systemic, like you understand, systemic, intrinsic, and extrinsic, okay? So systemic thinking is black and white. Extrinsic is everything outside of us kind of means something to us and occupies our thoughts. And intrinsic is something inside of us. So we start off more on the extrinsic journey. Your parents don't say, figure out how to go be happy in life. Go out and, have a good time, right? They're telling you, find a job. How quickly can you get a job and get off the payroll? Get something going on in your life, which is all fine, but that's the systemic kind of thinking, right? The extrinsic, you need to pay your bills. You have responsibilities. Makes sense. And that works for a while, right? But at some point in your life, just like Mark Twain said, there are 2 most important days of your life. The day you were born and the day you find out why. Right? So meaning gets a place in our life at some point. Having more purpose, meaning, and mission. And I propose to you that is the source of being elevated. It's starting to go from that external journey of the outside in to the internal journey of the inside out. And we all know this, right? We see people when they have passion. And we see people that are inspiring, right? We feel them. And that's a person that's got the inner fire. They're elevated. And they have a chance to warm other people, warm them like a big fire. They have a chance to elevate other people. So to go back to the map of the 3-part journey, we start off kind of systemic, kind of extrinsic, everything outside is our measure. But then at some point, we want to hit, if we stay there, for instance, in a job that we hate, which makes us hate Monday mornings, or we have a situation that we're not happy with, whatever it is, Monday mornings can be really dreadful. I know for me, when I went through my divorce, Monday morning meant to go back to work and hand the kids over on Sunday evening. So I started my whole week alone during the, how visitation goes sometimes in a divorce. So this is like, I'm trying to blaze a trail here, right? To our most elevated being, right? So purpose and intrinsic and fulfillment start to matter. In fact, eventually it can even take over. You are a person, not the world inside of you. You are a person in the world. Instead of all the world flooding into you, and you're reacting and responding to those opinions, those thoughts, those beliefs, other people, you become a single person in the world. And that's the place of a leader, right? Somebody who's standing out a little bit. I think this will work too. Nope, wrong. I went the old school way. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so
Just
now.
hit enter.
Hit enter. Sorry for that. How do maybe let's try escape. Yes! There should be an escape everywhere, right? All right, so I want to talk to you about the levels. Every new level requires a new version of you. And I want to tell you, like, these are how I've kind of organized thinking around levels. There's the default level, there's the what's possible level. All right, let's get a little more elevated. The default level, honestly, the default level for humanity in a lot of cases is disturbed about the past and concerned about the future. And that's the story that the person walks around the world with. Now, the accomplished the what's possible is a level a little higher than that. And then at the very top, there's accomplish the impossible. I'm going to show you some strategies for blazing this trail. Don't touch that. And by the way, if your whole life is spent just reacting to circumstances, you don't live your whole life. I do a lot of quotes. By the way, all the photos are part. Fulfillment for me is expressing myself creatively as well. So all these photos I've taken. So here's the little roadmap structure for getting to that elevated place. BLT. Break away, look up, and be at the top. Okay, like I went with Werner up to the top of Zion Mountain, although I couldn't make it all the way because, man, it was crazy at the time. It was like 10 feet wide and a 1,000-foot drop, and I wasn't too big for that. I wasn't too up for that. But Werner went up right through it like a rabbit. You know Werner?
I've met him once, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I have.
Yeah. So BLT, and I'm going to give you 3 strategies in each one. In each one of these. BLT breakaway strategy number 1: master better decision making in today's world by minimizing areas where you easily get mentally hijacked. There are some places that are just your kryptonite, right? I don't know what they are for you. I don't particularly like heights, as I just said, so I get hijacked by fear in those cases. Glass elevator? No thank you. Those people that stand on the piece of plexiglass at the top of the World Trade Center or one of those places? I don't think so. That makes me nervous just thinking about it. So there are areas where we easily get mentally hijacked. You know what you are. Now I want, where we're thinking, right, for you to internalize this, I want you to start preparing your own BLT. I'm giving you some suggestions, some thoughts and ideas. They may match for you, they may not. But avoid places where you might easily get mentally hijacked. I wasn't too fond of dancing, because I'm a frail, pale, male kind of thing, whatever they call that. And so I didn't go to many places where there would be dancing, except one time I went to a restaurant, it was full of tables, and then like 8 or like 9 o'clock in the evening, all of a sudden they cleared all the tables and there was a dance floor out there, and I said, where did that come from? I wasn't too happy about it, I was nervous. But anyways, I got over it for the day. Number 2, chop off the distraction fat of your day. There's a lot of fat, right? Non-nutritional weight that we carry around. As I already said, the ordinary level, right? The default level is disturbed about the past, concerned about the future. So one thing is we can stop arguing about, like we can not, it is possible that we don't have to be right about every single thing. It is possible. It is elevated too, because somebody can get in your face to try to prove a point and try to, hammer it down into you, and you feel a need to hammer it back. But it doesn't have to happen. What are you winning anyway? Who gets a door prize out of that? Nobody. In fact, usually you get some hard feelings. Social media, can be a distraction. Think about it. You can do your own mental daily audit of your time and find where the distraction fat of your day is. What do you think, Jeff?
No doubt. I've got lots of it. I've got a whole lot.
Thank you. Thanks for interacting. So, I call it, distraction fat. We're bloated with junk in our lives sometimes. A toxic person. Do we really have to have their approval? What are we needing in another person's approval? Remember now, we're doing the reverse from the world into us to us in the world. You have to have your own conviction, your own power. You have to walk around in your own self-esteem and understanding of who you are. And I'll show you some others, so I won't go ahead. I'll stop with that. So number 2, distraction fat. Number 3, this is an instant way to be above the disturbed by the past concerned about the future, anxiety. Be intentional. I sent a text to a lady the other day, or to a friend, and I said, I don't know her real well, honestly. It was kind of brave for me to reach out to her. And I said to her, I have a quote. Can you tell me a picture I should put with it? You know, like this picture I took in Houston and that quote I put together. And I sent this quote to her. I said, I am my best me when it's not all about me. That was a quote I created, and that's true. I'm my best me when it's not all about me. Like, I'm better out there. So she told me, so I was being intentional. She sent me back a text 20 minutes later, and she said, I'm thinking something with kids doing something. They got something in their hand. Children. I don't think this particular person has children. She even said, I'm not really crazy about children, but that's what came to my mind. So I went out and I found a picture of I don't have it actually, but I went out. Anybody like this quote though, by the way? Who likes it? Red?
Oh, thank you.
So I'm gonna get some postcards out of these, some of these
Appreciate
quotes, some of these pictures, photo quotes I call them. So anyway, I took a picture of two girls. It was an older, maybe a 10-year-old girl and a 6-year-old little sister. And the 10-year-old girl had her bike laying behind her, and she was helping her little sister learn how to ride the bike. I'm my best me when it's not all about me. Wow, what a fit. Intentional, it kind of manifested itself. And that happened within 24 hours. And being intentional is your pass key to an elevated place. Because all that other concern about the past, concerned about the future, isn't strong there when you're being intentional. It is probably the greatest power a human being has, right? Because in spite of all of this, the brain fighting with the mind, right? There's two sources within us. The brain protects everything and wants to guard and keep everything out, and the mind wants to grow and have free spirit and free will. These two things are fighting within ourselves. So don't ask what the day will bring, declare what you will bring to the day. Intentional. That's strategy 2 for break away. Break away from the ordinary. Break away from the default. Now we're going up to L, which is look up strategy, right. I got frozen for a second thinking because that L should be highlighted. But look up. Now look up. Here's why I have this stick. This is why I brought it. I won't injure the stick in the doing this. But if you look down, it's hard for you to balance the stick. Like, just imagine this is all your daily routine, your daily chatter, your daily noise, your daily disturbances, just daily action always. It's hard to balance that stick, but when you look up, it's like magic. So looking up creates some balance in your life. It gives you a chance to have the growth mind up here, and the elevation up here, and the Monday mornings not drag you so down. Success is not one-dimensional. Remember back to that chart. This is all the one-dimensional type of success. It's like that. On the blue line. Success is not one-dimensional. Some people claim success when they save a life. Anybody saved a life in here? Red, tell us about it real quick.
My brother-in-law had a problem breathing. I had to do CPR on him until the ambulance came.
Right on, thank you. There were 4 people in the Chesapeake Bay in November, and their boat they had a kayak, a catamaran. One of the holes had a hole popped in it, so the catamaran went tilted down, and the sail was flat on the water. And they were out there for hours, like 10 hours. Nobody was stopping by because nobody was out there. We were out there, we got them, and they were almost dead with hypothermia.
I was in Vietnam. We got a call for a ready alert launch. Actually, I was in the Philippines, and a guy had fallen overboard. He missed the midnight muster, and he'd been in the water for 15 hours or more. We found him about noontime the next day, and vectored a helicopter and a boat to go pick him up. And then I also got a Mayday when they were about 50 miles away from us, and we found them also. So yeah, I probably saved more than one life.
Thank you. Outstanding. And You know, that's a sense of power for you. That's a sense of self. That's an elevated place. That's not a standard version of success, but it is success nonetheless. And nor is it one size fits all. Strategy number one, just realize that. And you can define your own success. And I actually have some techniques on that. Not to be, you know, it's not the scope today, but align with your design. Like a pit bull is not designed exactly like a golden retriever. We all have sort of a special, you know, kind of a specific design. We're very flexible and adaptable, right? We can fit in to just about anything, but it doesn't mean it's natural. It doesn't mean it's elevated. It can, in fact, a lot of times, as in my case, part of the place I was dreading on Mondays is I was sitting in a cubicle all the time. And it wasn't my thing. It was tearing me up, but it was paying bills and doing great income, but man, it was not my place. Extraordinary only comes by adding who you are into what you do. That's the only time. Because what does it mean? Because it means you're a leader. When you're adding who you are into what you do, most people shy away from that a little bit. They sort of fit a certain, you know, framework of where they are. Getting this? Good. Number 3, take ownership of your well-being. Look at Gail here. Every time I see him, I want to talk deep. I want to go down in my voice, man. That's such a great voice. You know, well-being, he's vibrant. He's vibrant. You know, that's awesome. So you got to take ownership of your well-being. I'll tell you a quick story. It's 20 minutes. Can I take 5 more?
Of course.
I had a client. He had a neighbor. A few weeks before Christmas, that neighbor was putting lights up on his house on the 2nd floor, fell off a ladder and became paralyzed. True story. And my client friend, Rick, he would go visit that person. And one time he took his wife and he went to visit that person, see if there's anything he could do. Could he help him? Could he cook him a meal or anything? You know, bring him something, help him with a chore. Because he was paralyzed. He was done with moving around. You know, in the way he was used to. And when he left, he said to his wife, if anything ever happened to you like that, I would take total care of you. And you know what she said? She said, why don't you start now? Why wait? Take ownership now of your well-being. So that's strategy 3. Now we're up to the top. Okay, T. Be at the top strategy. Create and have peak experiences. There's our friend. I took my camera with me. That's Werner up there on Mount Zion, or Zion Mountain. And I had my flash. I had a big backpack. And I got a good photo of Werner. As I looked, he started climbing in his mid-70s, and he climbed Mount Everest the first time, I think, 78 years old. That's vibrant. That's some power. Now, peak experiences don't have to be a physical thing necessarily. It doesn't have to mean a mountain. It could be something you start, an organization, or something you commit to. Or, Albert Einstein did most of his work in a chair, thought experiments, right?
Did he invent the light bulb?
Want one of these, man?
Then he fell like,
Richard, want one?
Yeah, sure.
then he fell like, I don't remember how many times, 30 times or
you're
something,
thinking
in
Edison.
inventing a light bulb?
You're thinking Edison, not.
That's another person. But so Werner,
Oh, I thought you meant Edison, okay.
thank you. Werner and I met, and 5 minutes, 10 minutes after we met, he invited me to take a climb with him. I knew nothing about him. I didn't do a Google search. I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, I'll take it easy with the old timer. That's honestly, if I'm being open and honest, I just thought this was going to be, kind of a slow walk. He was like a rabbit on that trail, and I slowed them down. And not that I'm, magnificent physical shape, but he sure was. So create and have peak experiences. That thing where I texted that girl and asked her for a photo idea, that was in itself kind of a creative experience. Peak. A peak experience means you're in your flow, you lose track of time, your focus is golden, you're absorbed. Peak experiences. Number 2, reach for your dream. When you reach for your dream, it reaches for you. All right, I'm coming back to you in the blue blazer. When you reach for your dream, it reaches for you.
Thank you.
Right on. And that's true. I think Steve Jobs said, you know, you have to meet it. So that's another way of saying it. But anyways, when you reach for your dream, that's a picture of you know, dead tree that I saw when I was down in Florida in Manatee Bay. Number 3, be at the top. BLT. You know, this is what you want to have in your mind. Break away, look up, be at the top. This is going to help you on Monday mornings or whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? Be elevated. Because you know, to have elevated results, you have to be elevated. Above yourself even, above your own little trash talk, inner trash talk. Remember, now this is something we can all do, it's a little bit of an exercise. Remember something you accomplished that you had thought was impossible, but you did it. Some people started a business, some people stood up in front and spoke. I went and danced one time. It's hard. That stupid restaurant turned into a dance floor. This is my cousin, he's a Navy SEAL. He used to run the Coronado Navy base. He's a retired commander, and I went and visited him on his own private island, June, 2 months ago. And I was sitting next to him on a pier, and I had my camera, and I said, you know, you see what this is doing to me? The light coming behind my head. I said, take that. When he grew up, he was a wimpy, big Coke bottle glass, fell down a lot kid, wimpy. Retired Navy SEAL commander. It's only impossible until you do it. I knew, just like I did with Werner, I knew that I was going to create a special, I call it legacy portrait, which is a photo with a quote. And this was the fit I got for him. Just like I talked about the fit for I am my best me. It's not about me. A great fit for that was the 2 girls. Okay, wrapping up. So if I'd like to have a passport session, this is what I do. I create your leadership position statement. Mine is, I'm creating peace, power, and prosperity by accelerating high achievers to significant success and wholehearted fulfillment. That's another way to elevate is to and. You know, Elon Musk, luxury and economy, right? Gandhi, you know, civil disobedience. So disturbance and conflict with peace. The and factor is more powerful, in my opinion, than the why factor, or at least it makes it more tangible. So that's my presentation.
Ask any questions?
Yeah. Any questions? Thank you, everybody.
Let's give him another big hand.
Yeah.
Carl Root.
Okay, I quickly,
Certainly.
how else do you do this aside from this kind of presentation?
Tell me more, so I can understand.
Well, do you? I mean,
Oh, I have programs. One of my programs is Mondays Reimagine and the 7 Powers of Purpose. Is that what you're asking?
Program, what is it?
Consulting.
Okay.
Yes, I do consulting work, I do speaking. I have a one sheet if you'd like to have it.
Yeah.
It's got more explanation.
Okay.
On the front are my topics: Success Reimagine, Mondays Reimagine,
Mm-hmm.
Leadership Reimagine. On the back are my programs. Anybody else like to have a copy of the one sheet?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. How do you meet you?
Shante.
Shante. Carl. Nice to meet you. Thank you again. And there's more postcards when anybody wants one.
Thank you again, Carl. I don't know about the rest of you, but I got a lot of takeaways. So, our next speaker, rather than a medical professional, a physician affiliated with hospitals, Red O'Loughlin is a researcher, and he focuses on cause and effect. And you'll hear a lot of that as he goes along here. He's a retired Navy captain, 31 years, and 51 different countries that he's involved with. I think he had as many as 5,000 troops under his command during this time. got 5 academic degrees and 7 professional degrees. He's author of 5 books and is a distinguished Toastmaster. You'll see that as he starts speaking. Married 54 years, 2 kids, 3 grandchildren, book strategist, best-selling author, and if you have a book, maybe still tucked away in the mind, or if you started on one, you need to talk to, because the man sitting next to him, eye at eyes, had his book published by Red. 2 books published by Red for co-host, primary presenter for USA Global TV Network. It's something that I watch, fantastic, with Dr. Jackie Purbeck and Red. And we've already told you that there would be a recording here, so help me welcome Red O'Loughlin.
Hey, Red.
Thank you so very much, Gail. I really appreciate those kind comments. Before I get started today, a couple things following in a little bit of the discussion earlier. Normal Purvey, anybody know who he is? He's at Nepalese. He's climbed 14 of the highest mountains in the world in 7 months, all over 26,000 feet. I think it's on Netflix, is a thing on that. My only claim to fame on mountain climbing is Huayna Picchu. If anybody ever goes to Machu Picchu, it's that mountain you see, and behind it, it's relatively easy to climb, about 45 minutes. It's about 1,000 feet higher than Machu Picchu. But it's something that if you don't know that you can do it, it's one of those things you'll never do. So that one, if you ever get down to Machu Picchu, consider climbing Huayna Picchu. It's not difficult. It really isn't. Last thing I want to cover before I get started today is that this thing here with the looking at the top versus looking at the bottom, I can't remember a better example of showing a point vividly than Carl Loop did. I mean, congratulations. That was worth the price of admission, if nothing else was today. That was an exceptionally good one. So give Carl a hand for that. Because that really was magnificent in the way you were bringing that point across. Because, yeah, you can say you look at the top, but we don't always see that same way. But that just sealed the deal. Okay, we talked about me a little bit. Let's get into the program today. Not everybody has a concern about fat, but some of us do. I mean, if you could squeeze an inch, you probably have a problem with it. But that doesn't mean you're unhealthy. It's a whole lot better to be healthy, whether you have an extra inch or more. You may have no extra inches and be as unhealthy as can be. So just the physical appearance is not indicative of health. And that is a big thing, because a lot of us have this vision that we need to be thin and svelte, and that's not always the case. In fact, when you get to bodybuilders, they're typically most of the time in that 10, 12, 14, 15% until they get ready to get on stage, and then they go down to about 4%. And if they stay at 4%, they will have some serious problems health-wise, because you need fat. Fat is absolutely required for our health. I'm going to talk a little bit about what fat is. I'm going to answer 4 questions. What causes fat to go into a fat cell? What causes fat to come out of a fat cell? What causes fat to burn, and what stops fat from burning? Again, this is educational. Don't just arbitrarily start something because I say this is one of those things. Especially if you're on prescription meds of any kind, because you really need to talk to your doctor about it. Make sure that you are in fact okay with what's going on, because there's a lot of things, particularly with prescription drugs, that we really don't understand. And if your doctor doesn't know, talk to your pharmacist, because they are people that really should know. So that's why I want to cover today as quickly as possible. What's fat? We sort of have an idea of what it is. It's fatty acids and triglycerides. Typically in our body we have cholesterol and triglycerides flowing through our veins all the time. Fat is not stationary. It goes in and out of cells all day long, depending on what's going on in our bodies. I put several things up here that says this is what you have, and it really is a good protective mechanism, especially for the internal organs. But when you look at what do we really need, the fat really supports the absorption of minerals, particularly if you take a, let's say right now, Carl, you took a omega-3 fatty acid just because you had the nutrient. If you don't have fat in your system, right now your digestive system, that's just gonna end up in the toilet because it doesn't have something to glom onto. So you need a little bit of fat to get the vitamin A and the vitamin K and the fat soluble vitamins into the nutrition part of our body to be able to absorb. So fat is extremely important. What are the sources of fat? Well, typically think I'm gonna have a nice prime rib dinner. You can see the fat on the outside. That's fat. There's fat in a lot of things. Sometimes we don't even see it. But that fat, if we look at it as a source, goes into the body. We know it's there. So as I start talking about these things, on a normal human, healthy human, anything that is supposed to happen and does happen is gonna keep you healthy. But anywhere along the line, if there's a, as you talked about earlier, a distraction, a disruption in our normal mechanism, now we have a bit of a problem that can cause issues health-wise. It may not necessarily be with the fat part of it. So the first thing we have is that food goes in our mouth. Actually, before that, we actually see it. That starts a lot of things. But the saliva we have in our mouth, if we're not fully functional in that, that's the first part of digestion. As you're chewing, there's the thing called Fletcherizing. Fletcher used to be a guy back in the 1930s who said chew everything 33 times in order to make sure it's fully enveloped into the digestive enzymes within the mouth. That way, when it gets into the stomach, now you have a far better nutrient density absorption into the body itself as opposed to most of it ending up in the toilet. So that's the first part. As it gets into the stomach, now you have other things that are happening to it. But the fat, as you just ate it, is going to go down literally into your lower intestines. In the meantime, because everything was in the stomach, that fat started several things happening. Number one, it caused the gallbladder to release bile to make this thing a little bit more absorbable. Liver provides some enzymes. So there's a lot of things going on internally, but it's not until it gets to the small intestines does that fat actually get broken down. So you get big chunks of fat, big molecules. Now it's broken down, esterification is a thing, and all of a sudden now we have small particles. And then as the body starts to absorb these things, it doesn't actually go right back into the bloodstream. It actually ends up in the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system will push it down to the lowest level of the capillaries where it can be absorbed into the body because the molecules are too big. So that's from a fat perspective. That fat then gets stored for immediate energy. And so, one of the questions I ask here is, does fat make you fat? Well, the answer is yes and no. Calories will make you fat. Fat that you ingest is used immediately for energy, but if you get too much fat, too many calories, then that storage keeps going on and on and on. So in a technically correct world, fat doesn't make you fat. But again, how much fat are you actually ingesting at a time? So that fat is now back in the bloodstream as it comes back up and being used wherever we have a lot of things going on. So one of the processes that goes on is that I have now these fatty acids that are flowing by. And if I have a fat cell there, on the outside of that fat cell, there's a couple of different lipases. One's a lipoprotein lipase, LPL, and its mission in life is to reach out and grab a hold of any fatty acid it can find, or any triglyceride, and it's going to shove them right into the fat cell. Its mission in life, its prime directive is to reach out and grab fat and store it. That's LPL. Now you have another little enzyme sitting out there also. It's called HSL, hormone sensitive lipase, and it wants to get stuff out of the fat cell. So depending on what's going on in your body, you have LPL pulling stuff in, you got HSL pushing stuff out. But you also have, on top of that, insulin. Insulin wants to store stuff then. So you have insulin now, but that's reacting on a different part that I haven't covered yet. But it wants to shove fat into the fat cell. In fact, we have 4 times as many fat storage locations in the cells around our gut than we have anywhere else in our body. So as you start looking at things, and men are different than women as to where we store fat at. But this is generally a pretty good indicator that we have a little bit extra. So let's talk about carbohydrates for a minute. Yes, we need them, but we don't need as many of them. We don't need them all super simple sugars. We need some level of complex carbohydrates. again, that can be an issue too. If you give up all carbohydrates, now you have a problem, potential problem with osteopenia, osteoporosis. There's several issues that go on with the body because of the carbs. Atkins diet, I think, is a great diet. However, you gotta be really careful on what you choose to eat, because if you don't, you will end up with a problem of your blood leaching calcium out of the bones to maintain the proper pH in the bloodstream. That's a different lecture entirely, I think we've covered it once or twice. But with regard to the carbohydrates, it comes in, insulin is now generated from the pancreas, and the whole process of converting that blood glucose, that sugar, that carbohydrate, that is our prime energy source for the body, for most of them. That's the body's gonna use that first. And it's gonna put it into a muscle. You know, insulin drives that glucose into the muscle. We have glycogen. That's what we use for everything we're doing. So if you're sitting there and you're just pumping iron, and all of a sudden you can't pump anymore, you've kind of exhausted that glycogen. Well, that's where the other stored fat comes from. So on a normal basis, we sit there, we eat something, we use up all of the energy that we store from that in the form of fat from fats, or fat that comes because of the carbohydrates. We use a certain amount of that blood glucose, we store it, the extra stuff gets stored as fat. So later on in the day when I'm not eating, or when I'm sleeping at night, my body still has access to that energy because it's stored fat. Now, if I eat just the right amount and in 24 hours, I've used it all up, I don't gain a pound, I don't lose a pound. But if I eat a little bit more, now I start gaining a little bit in circumference. A little bit more, and it's noticeable. So that's what's going on in the body with regard to the processes. So let's get to the basic questions here. Let's see here. Okay. There we go. What causes fat to go into a fat cell? I talked briefly about LPL and HSL. Those are the things that are primarily responsible. When you have carbohydrates in the equation and you have blood glucose circulated because you just ate something, now insulin gets in there. But there's a lot of other things there too. You know, if you have a problem with generating insulin resistance, that is an issue that is going to create a problem. So these are the things that generally force fat into a fat cell. So as I'm looking at it, my energy is coming from the fat as stored fat, glycogen or whatever. But however, as I get older, a lot of things affect my body. And as that happens, there's a tendency for insulin not to be as effective as it typically is. And that's called insulin resistance. Anything that enters the equation as insulin resistance means you need more insulin to get the same amount of stuff stored. Now that creates a problem, because that's where we get these extra little fat cells starting to fill up that we can't do anything about. So what causes insulin resistance? Many things. I just listed a few of them here. I don't have to go through all of them, but let me just pick a couple of them here at random. Adrenaline and cortisol, stress. If you're not managing your stress on a daily, almost hourly basis, and what's the easiest way to handle stress? Smile, laugh. A lot of ways of handling it. High fructose corn syrup, and so many things we have. Fructose and alcohol are considered poisons in the body, and the liver wants to process them out as quickly as possible. Well, we have liver cirrhosis because of alcohol, and also toxins, but we also have a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that's caused by too much fructose. You know, in an apple, no problem. In the amount they put into a Coca-Cola, big problem. Gestational diabetes. 100 years ago, doctors took care of it easily. There was no problems because they realized that the fetus took chromium away from the mother. So they gave them supplemental chromium. Gestational diabetes went away. World War II came, everybody forgot everything that they ever learned before World War II. And even today, I mean, I'll tell people, you know, chromium, and they'll talk to their doctor, and I've known several people, I cut my insulin in half just by taking chromium. It's one of those things that we just don't remember what we did way back when. Enough on that one. So what causes fat to come out of a fat cell? Well, everything that caused fat to go into a fat cell will cause it to go back out if it's reversed. So if I'm reducing my insulin, how do I reduce with insulin? Shut down my intake of carbohydrates. So if I watch what I eat, now if I go with a simple sugar, it's going to just spike. But if I go with a baked potato or some kind of rice, it's going to take a long time to spike. But again, it's not what you're eating, it's how much of that what you're eating. So our eating habits are a big deal. There are things in there that will cause fat to be absorbed easily. There are things in there that will stop fat from being absorbed. And these are just supplements that are fairly, in fact, there's just a lot of natural foods that will do this. Same thing with carbohydrate. You can actually take a carbohydrate inhibitor and it will stop the carbohydrates from becoming a fat in the body. We talked about insulin, well, it's the same thing, glucose control. HSL, we talked about that's hormone sensitive lipase. There are several things, and again, just go to Dr. Google or Dr. YouTube and pull up, what inhibits HSL, what releases HSL. There's a lot of things in there you can learn. Ghrelin is one of those hormones we have in the body that when our stomach is empty, it says, I need to eat. And it's going to be very powerful. It's going to talk to the brain, I need to eat. Now, a lot of times you wake up in the morning and you're dehydrated and you'll get that feeling, I need to eat. But at other times, it's the habit. I've woken up for 40 years in a row, I gotta have breakfast. It's a habit. In fact, I'm starting this afternoon. I do a 72-hour fast every month. Usually it's about 150, but I start for 72, and that's what I focus on. But this afternoon, my wife and I are starting on a 72-hour fast.
Right.
And so that'll be my monthly fast. I've been doing it for years. At the beginning of Lent, I did an 8.5-day fast. At the end of Lent, I did a 5-day fast. Fasting is a very good, very healthy way of fixing a lot of things in the body, but that's another topic. So control the things that force fat into the cell, and you'll find fat comes out of the cell a whole lot more easily. What causes fat to burn? Our basic metabolism. If all I do is sit on the couch, watch TV, I'm not burning very much. If I go out for a walk, half-hour walk, I'm burning a little bit more. If I'm very heavily involved in gardening or some other activity where I'm working up a sweat, my metabolism is higher. But if I'm only working 20 minutes a week on increased metabolism, that's a drop in the bucket. That's not much at all. I need, as you talked about earlier, Carl Luke said consistency is key to a lot of things that we succeed in our life. We have to be aware, and that's what this is here today, awareness, a little bit of education, but consistency in what we're doing. Our thyroid, all of our hormones, no matter which hormone it is, every hormone, if you have a hormone imbalance, it's going to affect some aspect of your health, and more than likely going to affect some aspect of your ability to create or get rid of fat. Iodine is directly related to thyroid. Adrenaline, again, is a stress issue. Your sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, too much estrogen, you're going to collect fat. Too little testosterone, you're going to collect and save fat. One of the things that I preach on almost every one of the bases that I talk about on nutrition, balanced nutrition. That means over 30 of the nutrients you need on an everyday basis. Make sure you have them every single day. If you start to leave something out of the equation, it will affect you down the road. Okay, what causes fat to stop burning? Well, kind of the reverse of what we just talked about. If I can get fat to burn, well, what stops it from burning? Something is reversed. And as I look at it here, my basal metabolism rate. If all of a sudden I was out and my typical exercise was, running, I used to run, 5 to 8 miles a night pretty consistently. Back in my 40s, I was a standard every single day. That was my normal at that time. Then I switched over to not quite that many. Nowadays, I do 100-yard dashes, each one faster than the previous. That's my current exercise. But I don't do it as consistently as I did maybe 3 years ago. So it's one of those things. As you're doing something, consistency is the key. Our sugar levels. How many carbohydrates are we taking at a time? That's something you see. You know what you're eating. Now, in addition to what you're eating, become a master of the labels on the food you buy. Read the label. Be a master of what's on that. The biggest thing that we see, okay, it's got 2 grams of carbohydrates. But you don't see that this thing has 10 servings in this whatever pack it is. So you're eating the whole pack, think you're getting 2 grams, you're getting 20. So the servings determine the multiplicative factor for how many things are on the outside of that label. Inflammation starts at the cellular level. This is your free radical damage. And it comes from thinking, exercise, digestion. It comes from toxins. It comes from the food you eat. It comes from the personal care products that we put on our bodies. Everywhere in thing that we touch on a daily basis or think about creates free radical damage in the body at the cellular level. Chronic low-level cellular damage will eventually lead to oxidative stress, which will lead to some form of disease in about 99% of the cases. Stop it at the basic level, the cellular level, antioxidants is what is needed, and you can control that inflammation. There's a really simple blood test called C-reactive protein. Anybody ever heard of it? CRP? It's a simple blood test, usually around 20 to 40 bucks in most cases, and it will tell you how much inflammation you have in your body. Simple test. I don't know why the doctors don't have that on a standard basis. I get it every year as part of my annual physical. I order one, but I can go down to the local lab and get it. But CRP will tell you, you want it to be as close to zero as possible. Most of the time mine is unmeasurable. So I know that my body has zero inflammation in it because I'm not allowing that to creep into the equation. And there's a lot of things you can do from an antioxidant perspective to keep that cellular inflammation. But that is what you're looking at. Oxidative stress, next one. Dehydration, what's simpler than just keeping your body hydrated? Electrolyte imbalance, hormone, I mean, all sorts of imbalances, it doesn't matter what they are. Our body was meant to have a certain playing field. You start tipping the playing field and our health is going to go, or in our case, extra fat stored. So those are the basic things, and I'll offer, if you have a card in there, I'm going to give 2 books. One that I wrote on health in general, on how you can improve it. Another one on the subconscious mind. And as they're drawn, I'll go ahead and put your name on that. And if I have any quick questions, I'll answer them right now, 2 of them, and then I'll turn the thing back over to Gail.
I think I got a good shot.
Pick 2 of them out for me. You had a quick question?
I might mention that I started walking a mile 1 to 3 times a week and lowered my sugar level.
Fantastic.
Cut out 5 pills.
Fantastic.
Now I might got another question.
Oh, you can take both my questions.
Huh?
You can take both my questions. Go on, Noel.
What creates a hernia?
Different animal. That's a rupture between the musculature in a particular area. It can be done by, I had a genital hernia, belly button. It can be you're born with it. It can be you have an injury that rips apart. So now the inner part of your body is trying to get through the outer part that it was not intended to be.
Because I didn't have any injuries, and I had to have 3 hernias removed back to February.
It's a
And
bigger.
now I got another one on my breastbone, which
Yeah.
is, they told me it's on my esophagus,
Well,
which I'm having an image done Monday.
That's something I can't, that's more of a doctor issue. I really, I don't write about that. I don't speak about them. I know about them just because I had one once a long time ago. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Gail.
You wanna?
Oh, do I wanna read out?
Yeah, announce the winners?
Jeff and Carl.
Right.
All right.
Right, volleyball team.
Okay, so we'll take care of the books after the show's over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Red.
All right. There's a reason I record these. Red speaks on health issues at each one of our sessions. And I have to go over those 2 or 3 times before I understand everything that he's saying. But thank you, Ed. So how many of you each week receive the Connections Now newsletter? You don't get that? No. Anybody else not receiving it? You don't receive it?
I honestly don't even,
Okay.
I've received it.
We'll make sure that you do get it, because a lot of the information that you learned here today is going to be in those sessions. I'll tell you about just a couple of the networking events. KBC, Katy Business Connections, or they like to call it Katy Business. I was just there this morning. So 8:30 this morning, I attended that before I came here. The Senior Estate Concierge rather than a networking group, this is a resource group, a solutions provider. All the people that are involved in taking care of seniors and their families provide the services here. So that was just yesterday. Great session if you're involved in that. I told you about Eric Stanley. He's pictured with a guy named Newell Cheatham in that upper right-hand corner, and Eric Stanley formed a group years ago called the In Houston Group, and Newell had one of the, I think there were like 6 different groups. Neil had one of those groups. It's continued for 13 years, Newell, is that correct?
Since '08.
I'm sorry?
Since '08, yeah, that's probably 13 years.
About 13 years, okay. So, great one to go to. The best Houston West Chamber networking event I know is called WOW, which is win on Wednesday, and that'll be up next Wednesday. CBFA, that's the Christian Business Fellowship Association, has, I don't know, 4 or 5 different groups. There's a good one on the 18th. If you're involved in conservative politics, there is a session on the 18th of August that you can attend, and everybody knows what happened on January 6th. Not everybody knows that our local congressman, Troy Nels, was defending against the individuals that were invading. Now, I'm not talking about the legal protesters. I'm talking about the ones that were trying to invade the Capitol, and Troy Nels was there. He'll be speaking at that event. Katy Christian Chamber has got an event on the 19th. Toolbox Ministry is one of my favorite events. I'm sorry, ladies. Men only. But there's like 200 to 250 men get together for these sessions. Fantastic event. There's a couple of them coming up here in September. Here's my gift to you. Brad Sugar's founded Action Coach, the largest business coaching organization in the world, over 1,000 coaches. He's coming to Houston September the 14th, and he's putting on a half-day seminar. The price to attend that seminar is $499, worth every single cent of that. I've attended a number of Brad Sugar's seminars. Brad has given me some tickets. Actually, Doug Winnie gave me the tickets. And if you want one of them, you can go to that link and you can get it for $37, and then they throw in lunch on top of that. Okay. Movement Connection for Seniors by Seniors is some interviews that I did with very, very successful individuals who are paying back to the community, and you can watch those. Watch them at some of these. One of those individuals was Red O'Loughlin. This is another gift for you. Now, my name's on the book, but most of the work was done by a friend of mine who's a physician that specializes in nutrition and digestion. But if you want to learn about your second brain, the gut, this is a great book. I'll send it to you free. History is full of courageous people who changed the world primarily because they knew exactly what they wanted and refused to take no for an answer. That's a quote out of the Miscellaneous Ramblings of a Slightly Deranged Mind by Roger Earl Wiltshire. Thank each and every one of you for spending the time with us together. We look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.